Hello there, welcome back to another review. Today we're going to be looking at the original Resident Evil movie made back in 2002. I've got Blu-ray box set here. So I thought start at the beginning, start with Resident Evil 1. And we'll just review this today and just get into it, what I thought of the original movie. I will try and get through all of them, but we'll start with one and we'll just go on from there. So it's directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, who obviously directed, Mortal Kombat. Lately he's directed sort of Monster Hunter, Event Horizon as well, he directed. So it stars Milla Jovovich and Michelle Rodriguez. And I was like, okay, this guy's done Mortal Kombat. Should be hopefully in good hands. We should be fine. I think obviously Resident Evil being one of my, if not one of my favourite video game franchise of all time. Have them all, Resident Evil 1 to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all of them. Resident Evil 2 especially, and 4 being main favourites of mine. But that I might, even do video game reviews of them at one point. But talk about Resident Evil today, I mean, I just remember playing, I say back in the 90s, Resident Evil 1 to 3, and then when I remember buying Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube, absolutely loved it, and PS3 got Resident Evil 5 and 6, and up to most recently, of course, Resident Evil Village. But again, we talk about the film today, made in 2002, and to say this film is bad, to say this film is terrible, I think is a bit unfair. And this is one of them films like my Star Trek movie review, the motion picture, saying, I'm not sort of quote unquote sort of a Trekkie, I'm not necessarily a complete utter fanboy. Resident Evil, I am a bit of a fanboy. Resident Evil is one of them things where, I've got a lot of opinions on it. I've got especially the movies, games, they're absolutely, most of them are complete masterpieces, but talking about the films, I think I've got, not to me own horn, but just what I mean is I've got stuff that I want to say that, I can give an opinion on this movie as a fan, rather than just somebody who's got sort of no context where this franchise has come from. So yeah, just getting into that today. Like I say, I was really looking forward to this when this was announced. I was they're finally doing a Resident Evil movie. I mean, like I say, the original came out in 96. So, it took about 5-6 years for them to really get a movie together. I think a movie was sort of always planned, but it just took a while to sort of, get things going. Not as long as what Tekken did, but, it took them a little while to get a movie off the ground. It's really not that bad, this film. It's not as bad as what some people make out it is. I think some people are a bit too harsh on this film. Some of the sequels do deserve all the flack and hate they get, because a couple of them, I won't say which ones, you probably know which ones I mean, that are absolutely god-awful. Or not god-awful, but they're just not good. They're just really not good. But this film, I think, is unfairly judged. I think it's not as awful as I mentioned, as some people make out to be. But yeah, being a huge fan of the games, I was really looking forward to this. I wasn't too impressed with the trailers, to be honest, but I thought, let's give it a go. Let's see what happens. I enjoyed Mortal Kombat. This is from the same guy. We should be in good hands. This guy understands how video game adaptations work, so we might be okay. We might be all right. I think the general sense I feel at the time when I watched this was I was just underwhelmed. I was totally underwhelmed by it all. I was surprised at some of the decisions made in regards to the film, and it left me. Unfortunately, the film it leaves you with more questions than answers at the end. Obviously, I know they like with any film like this, they think sequels. But at the end of the film, you really still don't know what's going on. You still sort of, there's more questions about the whole thing at the end of the film than at the start in many ways. Sometimes it's the film, the more sort of gets revealed slowly, you think, hang on, I've got another question. But over the years, I've just come to appreciate it for what it is, and to be honest, I find the movie quite fun, dare I say. I wouldn't say fun in the sense that it's not a bad movie, but if you look at it as a Resident Evil movie, yeah, it's not great. But if you just look at it as sort of an entity on its own, then it's not too bad. It really isn't too bad. Originally, it was a horror Originally, horror zombie master George A. Romero was going to direct the Resident Evil movie, as he directed an advert for Resident Evil 2, and I think that was only shown in Japan, this advert. I'm not too sure, but I know he did an advert for Capcom that was released, and I think it was only shown in Japan. So Capcom were very much interested in George A. Romero, and I think he did like a lot of scripts, or he was drafting scripts for his take on a Resident Evil movie. Obviously, Resi being inspired by, Dawn of the Dead, etc., and Romero's work, the two seemed like sort of a match made in heaven. Like, okay, let's get this, let's get the zombie, one of the best like zombie horror film directors. Let's match it up with one of the ultimate like zombie horror survival game. It's a match made in heaven. That all's got to work. But there are two factors with this. I think where it went wrong, I think Romero's script was more violent and not aimed sort of at children. I think it was a lot more brutal than what we got here with Paul W.S. Anderson's version. I think obviously Capcom and the producers or whoever may be in charge of the movie wanted to sell seats, so they wanted the younger gamers to be able to come and see it. So I think that was kind of an aspect. They had problems with George A. Romero's script, like sort of under 17s, and it was based on the first game, his script, which producers were not in favour of, because the first game had been out at quite some time at that point, and I don't think they were very much sort of in favour of having the first game sort of be the premise with the mansion and things like that. They thought the first game, might have been a bit of a cliche. It might have been a bit of a stereotypical, generic horror if it was just done in a big, a film fashion. So they needed something new and fresh, and that was quite a number of years, quite a number of years old at that point. The game was quite a number of years old at that point. That's what I was meaning to say. Because as I say, it'd been out around about 5-6 years by that point. So I think they wanted to bring it up a bit up to date, like looking at Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3. I just wish sometimes film producers would just do how a game is meant to be. Sometimes fans just want to see what the game is just on the big screen. Some games I think should be left alone. I'm all for seeing movie adaptations of video games, but I think sometimes you don't have to make a movie of it. It doesn't have to be a movie if it's not going to work. But I guess where there's cash to be made, people will just say, right, let's do a film of that. Why not? And Resident Evil should work as a movie. It should 100% work as a movie, but when it's given to, when some people try and change it a bit too much, it just alienates the fans, and it just, you sometimes think, well, this isn't Resident Evil. You think this isn't like the games I played. So basically, regarding into the film, basically the Umbrella are like this big corporate company. They've got big products everywhere, but people don't know that their main profits come from like military tech and like genetic experimentation. And basically then we go to one of their labs where someone, unknown person, smashes like a test tube containing a virus. Virus gets out all around the lab, leaves the lab, causing everyone in it to die, basically. We then cut to our protagonist, Alice, played by Milla Jovovich. She's got memory loss. She's lying naked on a shower floor in like a mansion. She finds a red dress and a note and a drawer full of weapons. Then loads of SWAT guys basically storm the mansion. They come crashing in through the window. So you're like, right, what is going on? I have no idea who she is. SWAT guys have just smashed in. Again, you're still like I've got a few questions, but you go with it because you think, okay, the film might explain itself. Then SWAT guys storm in, like I said, and they ask her to report. And then also this guy Matt suddenly appears, who's there, who says he's a cop. So he just suddenly comes out of nowhere. She goes outside, and then he suddenly appears in the mansion from nowhere. I have no idea where he come from. So that's happened. These SWAT guys come in. They said, report. We don't know what. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Then they get on board this train and they find another character called Spence there, who flashback like Milla Jovovich was married to. Like they were sort of you find out they were sort of a couple. He's in the train unconscious, and you find out they work for Umbrella. They were there to protect the access to the Hive, which is Umbrella's sort of research facility under Raccoon City, and that's where they're heading to. Like the mansion is sort of an access point to the Hive, which is underneath the city. We don't see much of Raccoon City in this film at all, if any. I don't think you see any clips, like any shots of Raccoon City at all. It's very much a confined film. It's all set underground in the Hive. The Red Queen controls the Hive, and she's shut it down. She's like the main system operator. She's like the like sort of artificial intelligence who runs the system. Now it turns out Milla Jovovich and this Spence, they were sort of exposed to this gas, which causes memory loss, which knocks them out, because she went into sort of her program when this tube was smashed. She sort of there was a protocol that this system does, and she sort of shut everything down and just went off grid and that kind of thing. So this gas was released as part of the shutdown process. And the team has basically gone to investigate like what happened. Really, that's what they've gone to investigate and sort of reboot the Hive. Then we find out, it turns out this Matt character, he isn't a cop. He's working with his sister who worked for Umbrella, who was going to smuggle out evidence to sort of bring Umbrella down, and Alice was sort of her contact who was going to help her. Alice was sort of, she did work for Umbrella, but she was actually going to sort of help these two activists sort of expose Umbrella for like its evil deeds and what it's doing, and just like basically getting out to the world what an evil company it is. Then after shutting down the systems, they realised that all the doors and zombies from the T-virus had been let out. So all these people that were infected initially, they shut down the system, lifts all the doors and locks on all the systems. All these zombies come out because they're not actually dead. They've been exposed to the T-virus, which sort of reanimates dead tissue. And then we find out it was Spence who released the virus at the start of the film, who Milla Jovovich was actually sort of married to but not married to, because it was a cover, because they were sort of in the mansion protecting the Hive, and so he basically wants the money, so he thought, I'll get out while I can. Finds out, like I say, Alice was going to expose Umbrella, and that's the plot in a nutshell. That's sort of a rundown. That's the plot, in a nutshell. So as mentioned, the film isn't bad. It's just very, very average in my opinion. It's not awful. To say it's awful is, I think, is completely unfair. It's just average at best. It is, like I mentioned earlier, it's so underwhelming, this film. Even for a Resident Evil film, I know they try to do something different and put a different spin on things, but that doesn't, like I mentioned, it doesn't always pay off. Sometimes people, where they are, they love a franchise so much, and they know sort of, this game, these characters and all that, you watching this film, you're like, what am I watching? This isn't necessarily Resident Evil. At the opening, we get a monologue about what Umbrella is, and then we see some dogs in a lab thinking, oh yeah, okay, the Resident Evil dogs. Then the film turns into sort of the opening of Speed with people trapped in a lift. And this woman says, annoyingly, she goes, I can get through the hole, I'll get through. And literally 5 seconds later, she goes, oh, I'm stuck. It's like, oh, surely you must have got an idea, maybe a vague idea you might get stuck. The guy playing Matt in this, I'm not sure what his name is, really doesn't have much to do. He really doesn't have much to do in this film at all, the guy playing Matt. There's sort of no development there whatsoever. There's not really a lot of development with any of the characters. The dialogue in this film is very stilted. It's very boring dialogue. It's very just barking orders at each other. Michelle Rodriguez, Milla Jovovich, and they try their best. The guy who plays Kappa, they do try with some of the dialogue they're given. It's not like they're completely not trying to inject something, but it just, unfortunately, because of the script and the way it is and just the stilted dialogue, it just doesn't 100% of the time work. I just wish they could have been, could have actually based the film, I wish they could have based the film that's based on a game just a bit more on the game. I think that would have helped it enormously. I think that would have really maybe helped basing it a bit more on the source material that you're choosing to base it on. I think that would have really worked. I think the trouble is, after like the half-hour mark, you're thinking, who the hell are these guys? Right? This is what you're thinking. You're thinking, who are these people? Right? And after about half hour, you're like, right, where's Chris Redfield? Where's Jill Valentine? Where's Claire Redfield? Where's Leon S. Kennedy? Where are these people? Where are these characters that are in the game? and you don't see them. You know, there's no characters there. Where's Wesker? Anybody? Nothing happens. Like, none of these characters turn up. Like I say, I can understand they wanted to like set it in a confined space rather than showing us Raccoon City. But why did they think we wanted to see people sort of roundhouse kicking dogs to the face and taking down zombies with kung fu? I mean, at what point did somebody say, yeah, well, we've got this really good, really good action horror game. What we do is, if we had the characters just sort of kung fu the zombies and like roundhouse kick dogs to the faces, then that'll be, I think that's what the fans want to see. It's like, probably not, probably that's not what I want to see. She runs up a wall, roundhouse kicks this dog to like the face, and you're thinking, what is this? What point did they think that's what the Resi fans out there want to see? Your guess is as good as mine. I actually don't mind the premise to the film. I guess the thing is, I just didn't find it scary enough. I didn't find the plot as that interesting enough. They do reference some things. For example, obviously the Umbrella Corporation. They have a countdown in the film like they end, the end of most of the games. Lickers are there, even though I think in this film they look god awful. They look absolutely awful. The Lickers, they do look better in the sequel, in Apocalypse, but in this they just look. They don't look great. Nemesis programs gets mentioned at the end, but that's about it, really. There's not really a lot else in this where you can say, that's from the games. The ending of this, where she wakes up in hospital, basically nude again. Starts off sort of like nude, ends with her semi-nude. Walks out, no food, doesn't have any food, doesn't have any water, doesn't even go to the toilet. Walks out freely, grabs a shotgun, readies it, and just stands there. Just cocks his shotgun, loads it, and just stands in the middle of this city. Nobody's around, so it's like, what are you doing? I understand it's like sort of it's the setup shot for the sequel while she's about to kick zombie ass. It's like, well, wouldn't it have been nice to have done that in the first film anyway? But I don't know. I just thought the ending was a bit tacky. That end shot, I just thought it was a bit sort of like there's nobody around. She's just grabbed this gun. She's walked straight out of, like I say, this hospital, this research place, and hasn't, like I say, had any refreshments, hasn't cooled down. She's got straight up after being unconscious, taken by these, like, the Umbrella Corporation, and then just basically just goes out, right, I'm going to take one shotgun and I'm just going to stand here and look all mean and, like, kick ass, But whatever. But the film is just, like I say, it's harmless popcorn entertainment. As long as you don't take it too seriously and don't get too hung up on it being based on a video game, which it is. But overall, like I say, it's not brilliant, but it's definitely, like I say, to me, it's just underwhelming. I think that's the real problem with this film. But it's okay if you just want to zone out for sort of 90 to 100 minutes, if you just want to zone out and just watch stupid sort of fun. But yeah, that's my take on Resident Evil. I hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll see you again soon.